Hello, everyone. It's been a while. Um, Today, I'm drawing some stuff, specifically planets. Um, Gonna go something like this. I've got I've got a bunch of planets arranged in a nice little pattern. A base color. So this one is a water planet, at least to start with. But we're going to oh we're going to add some land once I actually select the right planet. Figure out why it's doing that. That is not how it's supposed to behave. Oh, it's add. Whoa. Okay, I picked the wrong blend mode. I thought overlay was the right one. It's not any of these blend modes. I just want reset to default value. Okay. Default value is mix all along. It's been so long since I worked with color modes. Okay, so we're going to give guess we're going to zoom in. And we're going to give this planet some continents. The square continent. Could do shape continents, but so yeah, Blender can do this sort of thing. You just take a 3D model, even a much more complex 3D model, and you paint onto it, and it turns it into a texture, like an unwrapped texture. Very convenient for designing 3D places, 3D maps. That happens sometimes if you are looking at it from the wrong angle. Okay, undo. it projects the circle on the screen, like the brush circle. And if I put it along the edge, it's tough to figure out what to do, so the results aren't always the best. Okay, so start with a simple design. Later on, we will come back to this. Give this planet a little more flair. Yellow planet. So this one is like, to me, yellow is like a gas giant. Saturn in our solar system, maybe. Or Venus. So this planet is just a actually, my thought is give it small amounts of water peeking through the clouds. I wasn't going to do clouds today at all. I was going to leave those for another day, but apparently we're doing this now. So, unlike Venus or Saturn in our solar system, this planet has water. Possibly lots of water. It's just very cloudy. And speaking of clouds, another thing we could and probably should do is add some texture to them. Should maybe go get a proper texture. Yeah, I should. Because clouds are hard. Especially from space. I'm gonna skip the cloud textures for now. Actually, beyond just water peeking through, let's add some. I guess these could be rocks or metal or don't know what they are. Well, since I don't know, let's talk about something else. Specifically, clues to things. How much of a hint is too much of a hint? It's honestly pretty hard to give too much of a hint. Like, well, long before releasing the cutscene obvious, I suppose not just the angel, but I considered it obvious what the tunnels were, what they were for. Because of the reasons he stated. But honestly, it wasn't. And logically, I knew that. It's just emotionally, it's easy to get caught up in. I've given so many clues. Something should be obvious. I don't know if you've ever played charades and you were giving the best clue ever and no one got it. Not a single person. Well, it happened because you knew the answer already. You knew the answer, and so knowing the answer, I mean, obviously it made sense, but to people who didn't know the answer, there were 50 other things that you could be pantomiming. You could be doing charades of... I suppose I should give a concrete example. I once tried to pantomime a pinball game. And well, for reasons we won't get into, basic rules of this rules of this particular version of charades. Oops. I was doing it under a sheet so that my exact motions weren't clearly visible. But there were a limited number of things to do charades of, and people already knew that pinball was one of the answers. So it was a balance thing. But in any case, I pantomime playing a pinball game, and I think it's obvious. There are some simple actions associated with pinball. You pull the spring-loaded, whatever the launcher is called, launch the ball, and then you hit the flippers, and the flippers hit the ball. And I did these actions, and you could see these actions, and still no one got it because well, to them there were tons of other options. I'm now realizing this was not the perfect example. I guess let's get back to the cutscene. So when it happened in the cutscene, the angel says, "This is obvious. It's combine this fact, this fact, this fact, It all adds up. Simple as that. Done. So why didn't the Pastafarian already know this? Well, Pastafarian had her own ideas. Related to Pastafarianism, and there may have been others. She mentioned the Pastafarian one. Big surprise there. But, like, from an outsider perspective, how many reasons could there be for these tunnels to actually exist? Honestly, plenty. Or, like, they don't necessarily stand up to scrutiny with all of the details, especially the ones the angel laid out. His conclusion may seem the most logical, but for someone who knows nothing, well, could they be naturally occurring? Could they be channeling the duplicator a little here? Could they be some conspiracy to spy on everyone? Or the child? Could they be alive? Could they be? Lots of possibilities, and there's evidence that points in different directions. Like the child and duplicator find the child sees one sort of come together of its own accord. Is it alive? Does that make it alive? Well, the angel doesn't think that's a particularly relevant piece of evidence. He skips over that one. And he points to... He tries to simplify it. He skips over that piece of evidence. He skips over their... what the Pastafarian pointed out, their fairly chaotic arrangement. Tunnels are not well organized. The angel thinks that doesn't matter. He picks out 3 specific clues, puts them together in order, and so when you pick out clues like that, and spell it all out, or when you pick out clues like that, it kind of does spell it out, or at least one particular idea out. And that's the thing that Pastafarian was complaining about. Up until the angel picked out those 3 clues, the Pastafarian was dealing with tons of other clues, way more than 3, many of which were less relevant or misleading, according to the angel's view. And that's the case for a lot of things in this game. I've dropped some pretty big hints for stuff. And stuff that I don't want people to figure out yet. But I'm fine dropping those hints, which, like, when a reveal happens, you'll say, "Oh wow, these actually go together." But right now, they don't fit together because there are other hints that are irrelevant or pointing in other directions. Or for some of the hints, you don't, like, it's not clear if it's a real canon thing or if it's just this is a video game and it can't be perfect. But there are a few secrets in the game that if I lined up some clues, just put them together for you, point you to this screenshot from the game, which you already have access to, and this other screenshot from the game, which you already have access to, and two others like that, and single out those screenshots, those frames, those lines of dialogue, whatever the clues are. Then it would suddenly become obvious. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let the story reveal things in its own time. Just saying, there was a time when I was a lot more scared to drop hints. Oh no, if I mentioned this, people will figure things out way too early. And eventually I realized that, no, I can drop a lot of hints. I can do a lot of foreshadowing. And it'll be fine. Only a few of these will actually be found. Before it's more explicitly revealed. I should move on to another planet. There's actually a game that's pretty much entirely based around this concept of what's obvious to one person, like what's obvious to someone who knows the answer is not obvious to the rest. Well, honestly, multiple games. There's charades and if you've ever played Password or Taboo, games like that, where you have to direct people to guess a word. Let's see. Password is you get to give a single word as a clue and point them towards a different word. Like, you're not allowed to say the answer, obviously. It'd be way too easy. Taboo is you get to talk out loud for a while and just you can't say anything. You can't say the word. You can't say a certain list of related words. So try to make them guess baseball. You can't say pitcher. You can't say you can't say base. You can't say ball. Can't say bat or batter. You might not be able to say plate either, or home. But you can like it's a limited list of words. You can say Babe Ruth. Actually, no. Babe Ruth in particular might be excluded, but you could say the next best known baseball player. Or you could say, you could just describe the game without those words, and that would work too, but honestly, Taboo is less of a good example. Password is a better example, where you just have to say one word and then sit there and hope that that they guess the correct word, and the whole time you're sitting there, you're thinking like, no, this should be obvious. Like, come on, think of the right word. Yes, I meant that word. Please guess it. But it's not obvious to them because they don't have your benefit of, well, knowing the answer. Eventually they do guess it when your turn comes around again. You get to give more clues. Eventually they get it. But if you've never played that, give it a try sometime. Oh, right, I was going to talk about an entirely different game beyond that. There's a game called Zendo, which it's an interesting little game. You get you arrange cones in a certain order. I'm going to show you. Plastic cones. You can stack them, you can point them at each other, you can put them next to each other, touching or not touching. And you have a secret rule. So, let's see, the cone on the... So, the person who knows the rule is only allowed to respond yes or no. Yes, this one follows the rule. This one does not. It's probably a simple rule. In this case, like a very simple rule. 2 cones touching the ground and each other. Very simple, but there are just so many options to go through that it can actually take a while to guess a rule like that. Players have to figure out or run tests. Is it okay to have it off the ground? They might go for ages without realizing, oh, they actually have to be in contact. There are just so many ways to arrange 2, 3 of these little cones that can take surprisingly long. Which is ultimately what the Pastafarian was trying to express with the comment about empathy. That it is naturally hard to to use her term, empathize, but understand understand the difficulty of guessing the answer when you already know the answer. It's hard to see. It's hard to see the other options suddenly. Of course, I wanted the cutscene to end in a reasonable amount of time, so it's not like I could have her go into... Actually, I guess I could have done a wall of text. Walls of text are a thing in this game, but the thing is that I wanted people to read it. I don't normally write a full wall of text when I want you to actually read the whole thing. Because, well, just in comics and similar media, this is, I consider Run 3 to be like a comic, at least the cutscenes, with the the speech bubbles and the goes one panel at a time. Whenever a wall of text comes up in a place like that, it's pretty much not meant to be read. So I had to try and condense this idea as simply as possible. May come back to it at some point. It really is about time to switch planets. And I guess while I'm switching planets, switch topics, because it's about all I have to say on that one. Let's see. Oh yeah, at one point I was going to write a blog about the changes to the gentleman. The last time I changed him. That was a while ago, and I never got around to it. This is going to be an unhappy planet. That is way too red. Right, the gentleman. This was the back when I gave him an electromagnet, as opposed to just automatically going for the power cells. And like a big part of the reason I did that was just to increase the number of choices you were able to make. And when I say that, I mean you're essentially, if you think about it, making 60 choices a second, from one perspective. Even like ignoring moving sideways, just pressing the space bar or not, The game runs at 60 frames per second. And you can have the spacebar pressed on any given frame or released. And so with the spacebar alone, that is 60 possibilities each second. But before the electromagnet, well, it applied to the jump. The longer you hold the spacebar, the higher he jumps. And where he... and that can control how high he is when he comes into the radius of a battery and gets pulled to it. But with an electromagnet, like without an electromagnet, that's it. You're out of choices until you collect the battery and land. With the electromagnet, you can do more. You have more options. You can let go. It's going to pull you into a bad position. Just let go and do something else. Like you have the ability to control where you land. It takes skill, but this is a skill game. That's the point. But it's well, I like to think that this may or may not have made the gentleman easier in the end, because I think if that was the only change, it would have, but I think I changed some other things, like how far he can be before catching onto a battery at all. Ultimately, I think it improved the character in terms of how well you could do with him. And in terms of how fun it was to use him. Improved in both senses. Man. If this is lava, this is an unpleasant planet. I'm sure I did something to make him harder to use, in addition to adding the electromagnet. I just forget what. But in any case, yeah, the fact that you can turn off the electromagnet when you choose, and then later turn it back on, well, A, that is a very powerful technique, but B, it just gives you so much more to do once you've left the ground and before you land again. And that's... I prefer to add that sort of thing when I can, because otherwise time in the air is just sort of time wasted. You're in the air, you have to wait till you land in order to do the next thing. I mean, I'm exaggerating. You can always move sideways, and if the wall is anywhere close, that's very important. But for the cases where the walls aren't around, it's a square tunnel and it's a big one and you're in the middle of a side, yeah, this gives you something else to do. Something, if you mess up some way to try and save yourself, it means you're still playing the game while you're waiting to land. And yeah, the walls, or even slanted floors, I don't know when you want to start calling something a floor and something a wall. But you have, I'm going to draw on the planet. You're jumping, and you have, with the runner or child or skater or someone who just has to wait to come down, you still get to choose when you move sideways and touch the wall. There are still a lot of possibilities there. Do you touch it? You can touch it up here, you can touch it further down. When you're about to land, which can be challenging sometimes, but that's the point. What if this was not lava? Just a differently colored, an aggressively colored rock. This planet was struck by something, and, well, honestly, it would have to be smaller than a planet. Maybe it's a moon that was struck by something and fractured. It's not like lava is coming out. It's that it opened up chasms, and the chasms were exposing differently colored rock. It's just a very red rock underneath. I want to add shading, but I also don't. I wonder if it was run through. Could there be a similar starburst pattern on the other side? Even at the scale of a moon, it would probably not work like that. Anyway, back to the topic. To make a skill-based game, you want the player to be. Well, I guess you want a couple things. You want the player to be able to make decisions all the time. So, which means you want it to be meaningful whenever they press or release a button. Because that requires more skill. The timing a button press is a form of difficulty. And for skill-based games, you want a good level of difficulty. But it's not just that. Being able to press buttons at different times. Okay, let's talk jump heights specifically. As you probably know, you press the button longer and you jump higher. It happens this way in Run. It happens this way in pretty much any platformer I can think of nowadays, unless you count Super Smash Bros. As a platformer, where it works slightly differently. But basically, getting the right jump height is a form of skill, but it's also... Actually, let's talk about Smash Brothers versus other platformers. Smash Brothers, you have 3 frames, 3/60ths of a second, to release the jump button, if you want to jump lower. So you get a jump like this versus a jump like that. Actually, in Smash Brothers, it's pretty high. Yeah, let's say there are 2 different platformers where, from a running start, you can jump as low as this or as high as that. One of them is Smash Brothers. You have, well, in Smash Ultimate, you have 3 frames to choose the low one, and there are other ways. But let's pretend the other ways didn't exist. They do exist because Nintendo knows what they're doing, but pretend they don't. It would be hard to do this. Very hard, perhaps unreasonably hard. Easy enough to do this. You press it and release it at a rate that feels natural. Whereas in Run, I don't know, this kind of looks like how the runner's jumps work, though actually it's that, because you jump higher, you go farther, and that should apply to Ultimate too. But you don't have to choose just one or the other. You can choose, you can choose something in between, if I can draw it correctly, by releasing in between. So there's a much longer window of, a quarter, a third of a second, rather than a 20th. A much bigger window. It's much easier to get a lower jump and choose for a higher jump because, because there are more frames. It waits longer. to see what you're going to do. And waiting that length of time gives you control, like you, the player. The fact that there are more choices to make well, gives you a certain sort of power to control your movement. Whereas in Smash, where there are only 3 frames, it's harder. Not only is it harder, but you have less control. You can't do the middle jump. Just got to choose between 1 or 2. So yeah, my philosophy is not to badmouth Smash Brothers. There is another way to do it, an easier way. It's a well-designed game. It's just an example. Yeah, my philosophy is try and give the player as much control as possible, and then bump up the difficulty by making the levels harder. So try and give you control to, like, enough control to navigate as many situations as you possibly can. And then toss some tough levels at you. That was the idea with the Gentleman of you can turn off and on the electromagnet at will. It's the idea with that was definitely the idea with the Angel of yeah, the dash is just one length always, but then there's the slowing to a stop thing you can do afterwards. That gives you a lot of control. A lot of possible ways to mess up. That comes with having control, but well, that's the point. It's a skill game. I don't know for sure where I'm going with this, but so yeah, Gentleman got changed. Short version, Gentleman got changed to give you more control, and then I could make harder levels for him. Oof. Okay, I'm going to take a look at that. Why is it that spot in particular is not paintable? No, not over there. Bug. Or I was zoomed in too much. Now it's paintable. Look at that. Not just a bug. Some other topics to go over. Things that I never got around to making a blog post out of. Well, there was one more, but I'm not quite ready to discuss it. Okay, so you know what? Finish up this quickly. Do an even sloppier job than I have been doing. Move on to the next planet. It's hard to get the look you want when you don't even know what it's supposed to look like. I can talk about the creative process. I think I've done that before, though. But one of the things I fervently believe about creativity is well, like just a big part of creativity is trying things until you figure out a good one, and being able to recognize when you're on to something. I want to make a very orderly planet now. But I'm not sure I want to make it that color. It's a dark green on a light blue. It looks very dark in contrast. I'll take the brown. Not totally ordinary, but orderly. Very not ordinary. But I wish I did have something to talk about. Because I feel like that was definitely not it. I would go into detail on like examples of this creative process. I'm just not sure. Like a lot of examples I could come up with are spoilers, and I always do try and avoid those. Okay, my idea for this planet is either someone intentionally or some unusual turn of events pushed all the water toward the poles. Or pushed all the land toward the equator. So one idea, one possible explanation for this is it spins fast enough that it's just sort of actually I can show you what I mean. Yes. Yeah. It's more distorted. Probably not that much. But yeah, if it bulges out like that, then all the water would naturally be pulled toward the poles, and so you have a bunch of continents. Like, it depends on how high the land is. But most of the land is going to be toward the equator, and most of the ocean is going to be toward the poles. And who knows, there might be... Then you put some small islands. Out here. There's a bit of a distinctive planet. Said one of these was the planet. But that's only... It's only going to be true if I get to all of these in this stream, and honestly... well, it's only guaranteed to be true if I get to all of these in this stream. Okay. I put a hot pink in my palette. So I started talking about the creative process earlier. Next part of the creative process. Take inspiration from constraints. I have this hot pink color. I don't know why it would show up on a planet, especially a water planet. But if I could figure it out, if I could come up with an explanation, it would be interesting. So, my constraint now is a hot pink color. Creativity comes if I can work with it. Okay, so to start, what does it look like? Can I recognize anything? No. Well, it doesn't look anything like would be found on Earth, and I have to admit the blue color is making me think of Earth. All kinds of colors exist in nature, to be honest. I'm going to call this a coral reef, if it were a little less regular. So coral reefs don't get this big on Earth, but perhaps they could on a different planet, and grow above the surface of the water because of reasons. It's alien coral. They don't follow... Actually, no, what they follow is land. So you have a... I need another green color. You have land in a shape and a coral reef where the ocean is not too deep. I said this was alien coral, but we're going to follow that rule. And it's sort of a dominant species of coral on this planet. It's a highly successful coral. So there is so much of it you can see it from space. But it's not just pink. Coral is all kinds of colors. We're going to be using pink as the primary color of this coral. We're going to be putting other colors in there so that it's a little more diverse. I don't actually like that color in here. I want that. Oops. Again, the wrong green. This is going to keep tripping me up, isn't it? I don't want a dotted line either. So instead of a dotted line, entire sections of other colors. And we'll say it's shaped like that because the ocean floor is shaped like that. And I got the wrong green again. So if it's a dominant species of coral, it should just outline the land, shouldn't it? Well, maybe it's only dominant from this far north to that far south, so it outlines much of the land, but not all. We have proof of life on other planets. Colors. Okay, so I like those other colors, but I'm going to be removing them for temporarily. So that I can... Okay, so here's the creative process. I throw something at the wall, see what sticks. In this case, so like I start with, okay, I want pink on blue. I do some scribbles. That doesn't look like anything. I do a little box. I could kind of see that being coral. Okay, we're doing coral. Let's draw some coral. Let's make up some rules for why there's coral. It's dominant species. It lives near the land. Decide, do I just want to think through consequences? Is this going to outline all of the land? Here I am recapping things you watched just minutes ago. But yeah, think through consequences. Consequences are good. They help you build a more in-depth, consistent story. If you don't like a consequence, then add a rule. In this case, goes that high, that low. And now as for colors, I'm going to say that for the most part, it's based on the color of the coral is dependent on how deep it is. So it's going to be pink nearest land, and then it's going to go to this blue. Though it's not going to be perfectly smooth. There are going to be irregularities. Possibly indicating the depth of the ocean. Possibly just because it's life, and life is messy. Who knows? Maybe it's maybe then it's pink again, but it's not all pink. In here there are there's a lot of this yellow beige with spots of pink. If you zoom in, the colors probably get more complicated, but this is what we can see from space. Over here, it's a little thinner. Let's actually emphasize that. slope is very steep here, so it quickly gets too deep for the coral. So it goes through the pink, blue, and then back to pink with beige. And then that's it. Okay. Not that this will ever necessarily need to be explained again. Like, unless it's really important, this sort of detail can be left in the background. It helps to know that there's a pattern, and when you're drawing it, it helps to know what the pattern is, but in the end, this will just be a hopefully cool planet design with mystery colors. Oh yeah, and more on the creative process. Like, none of this is final. I'm going into a lot of detail, possibly more than I should be at this stage. But go in depth, and then later change it. Later on, I figure something else out about the coral. I don't know what yet. I will figure that out. Or the planet, or its role in the story. And I need to change it to make it fit the story, or the new details, or whatever. Well, that's fine. I'll change it if I need to. Come back and redo it partially or entirely from scratch, but like, just even having this sketch done, it's just a sketch, it's a rough draft. It helps you think about the problem, the scenario, the story. It helps you think about this one planet. Gives you something to look at while you're brainstorming other details about the planet. And so, having tried something, having drawn a map, even a bad one, a rough one that is definitely not going to be accurate in the long run, it's a step towards drawing it correctly, drawing the one you want in the end. You're not going to finish it unless you try something and get it wrong first. This is just one fact about the planet. Later on, I'll have, if it turns out to be an important planet, no guarantees there, but assume it does turn out to be an important planet. I will have all kinds of other details, and gotta change stuff. And eventually I will have basically the perfect map that fits in with the lore, the role this planet is supposed to play in the story, and the ecosystem, the natives, if there are any, stuff like that. And eventually I'll have that perfect map, but there's no way to draw the perfect map the first time. Like, there's no way to get everything all at once perfectly. You just got to try something, get it wrong, and then you can see something that's slightly better. Like from here, I'll be able to see a better version, envision a better version. And from there, I'll be able to envision an even better version, and eventually I will get to the ideal version. No, I won't, because I have to finish it sometime. If I wait for perfection, I'm never done. But I will get a close enough to perfect version eventually. That only happens after you try stuff and get it wrong. I'm kind of paraphrasing the programming experience here. You build a piece of software, a tool, needs to do a thing. And partway through, you realize it doesn't do this thing, and it couldn't have. Because there's an important step in the process, and you didn't see it coming, but there's a thing you need to, certain way you need to do things, and you need to design the whole thing around that. But the first time you designed it, you didn't even understand the problem well enough to see that thing. Honestly, I should be giving puzzle games as an example. Like some puzzle games, you can look. You can just stare at the thing without trying anything and figure out the solution, and that's cool. Sometimes it's fun to do that, but for really complicated ones, you don't even understand the puzzle until you've failed it a couple times. Gotta try it, do your best, fail, and come back with a better understanding. Try again, do it, start over, do it a different way, eventually get it right. Of course, puzzle games are designed, they don't want to frustrate you too much, so you probably don't go through too many steps like that. Programming the puzzle can be pretty big. There's no game designer ensuring that programming challenge is solvable in 2 steps. Nor a map design problem. Like I would imagine needing more than 2 steps for this map. Well, not just the map, but planet as a whole. See pink poking through. Could erase it, or I could just expose it. As long as we're adding tiny amounts of pink there, let's add tiny amounts of pink various other places. make it a little longer so that it's not just another dotted line. If you remember the dotted line from earlier, that looked pretty bad. It's thicker than I'm going for. I like the look of that. It took a while, but not bad. Maybe a little less up here. I don't want to do that for all kinds of continents, but I picked the wrong green again. I told you it was going to keep coming back and tricking me. This continent goes all the way to the poles. Okay, next question to figure out, and hopefully in a creative way, does this planet have ice? If not, what kind of ecosystem or what kind of climate is that? I don't know if you can have a planet that's temperate everywhere. I think if it's going to be a planet with water and recognizable life, it's going to need ice. As much as I'm not trying to make this look like Earth. So, and to be fair, Earth does not, let's make it a single big land mass. Earth's continents are not shaped like this, like a tennis ball or whatever. Go all the way around, maybe? Actually, I'm going to emphasize that texture instead of painting over it. Texture is good. And as I said, I don't want to go through doing all that detail again, but wow, look at that. I bet that's another... Actually, I don't know what that is. Let's take a look. Oh. Yeah, okay. That's the problem. It's at the very edges of the UVs. So I'm going to need to stay away from there. Let's Stay away from the seams. Yeah. Yeah. Turn those shaky hand lines into intentional texturing. Now add some coral. Yeah. Nope. And just pretend that that has the same level of detail. Okay. So this will be the side I look at for reference, and that's just to acknowledge that it should be on all sides. Come back to that someday. Maybe. Okay. I successfully used a hot pink color. Oh. So a mistake I made in the past. I never actually saved these images. Like I go to all this... Oh, right, that image no longer exists. Go to the trouble of oh no. I just I think I lost all of the painting I did on everything but this one that I actually saved. Can I undo? No, I can't. Our Blender is glitching out. Yep, there it goes. Well, I guess that's the end of the stream then. I'm sorry. I did at least get to save my favorite my favorite result. So there's that. But since I did not get to all of the planets, I'm afraid that yeah, I'm gonna have to go back on the thing I said in the description. Anyway, I will see you next time, and hopefully Blender will not crash. We're not actually going to be doing this next time, but hopefully the program I use will not crash. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.